Today, I want to share with you 9.5 mistakes that are killing your freight broker sales calls. Yes, these are things that are killing your sales calls. If you are struggling with getting shippers, if you're struggling with cold calling, if you're struggling with contacting shippers and engaging with shippers and getting freight, moving freight, making money as a freight broker, it's probably a challenge with what you're saying on your sales calls. So I want you to tune in and listen to me very carefully. And the key is, if all you walk away from this with is one nugget, it can literally make the difference between you landing a 6 or 7 figure shipper in the next 30, 60, 90 days. And I think that's a worthwhile investment. So really quick, number 1 on the list, you talk too much. Yes, you talk too much.
You talk too much.
You never shut up.
I said you talk too much.
Oh boy, you never shut up.
Right? That's an old song. And the reality is that's what a lot of salespeople do. They talk too much. They make it all about them. They don't take a breath. They talk too fast. And what happens is the buyer on the other end of the phone just hears, I'm not interested, and they hang up. So the reality is talk less, make more. Now, how does that work? The way it works is this: you have to, one, get their attention, but then you have to ask interesting and compelling questions to engage them in a two-way conversation. I'm going to give you an example of a question. You can jot this down. How do you see your needs changing in the next 6 to 12 months? You see, that's not a question that they can answer with a yes or a no. What it is they actually have to think about it. And that's going to engage a response of which you can then have a dialogue, right? So rather than you just talking and them listening, you need to listen more. There's a reason why you got 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? You're supposed to listen twice as much as you talk, okay? Number 2, being unoriginal and boring. Okay, so there's a couple components to this. Number 1, unoriginal drives me crazy. If you're using one of the following sales pitches as a freight broker, freight agent, you seriously need to consider making some big changes to what you're doing, even if you're having a little bit of success, okay? Number 1, hey, we've got trucks in your area. I thought we might be able to work together. Dead, old, boring. They've heard it a million times. Unoriginal, fail. That's an instant fail, okay? Number 2, hey, we're a freight broker. I thought we might be able to save you some money on your freight. Again, same exact thing. They've heard it before. And not only that, now you're painting yourself into a corner because now you have to save them money. You have to be cheaper in order to get their business. And that's a no-win game, right? The secret is be different, right? Different is better than better. You have to learn to be different. You have to get their attention. You can't sound like everybody else. If you do, you're going to get treated like everybody else, and you're going to get the dial tone, or you're going to get the, hey, we're not interested, or they're going to give you the push off. Okay. So that's number 2. Number 3, not doing your homework. Okay. This is like a mortal sin at this point. And here's why. When I started in sales back in 1992, the internet barely existed. And it wasn't anything like the internet today, right? So it was very hard to gather what I call sales intelligence, data that helps you enhance your opportunity to get the sale. So it was very hard to do homework on specific shippers, right? Or specific businesses. And so now today it's very easy. We have Google, we've got their website, we've got LinkedIn, my 3 favorite sources for gathering sales intelligence before the call. So take 2, 3, 5 minutes. Do a search on Google about the company and their industry. Look on their website about recent press releases. Check out what products they actually make and ship. Look on LinkedIn a little bit about the shipping manager. So the reality is you can build a profile very, very quickly about that shipper and about that prospect that you can then use to create a compelling opening, to be different, and to engage your prospect and to sound different, right? Not doing your homework is a huge, huge mistake. I can tell you right now, it's a major mistake, right? All right, so number 4, bad-mouthing your competitors. All right, listen, you've all heard this before, but I've heard people do it. Bad-mouthing your competitors is never a good idea. All it does is show your weaknesses and insecurities. So rather than bad-mouthing your competitors, if a competitor comes up in your conversation, your focus should be to tell your prospect how you are different. Remember, different is better than better. Show and tell how you're different. Now that means you have to understand who your competitors are. So you have to do a competitive analysis and try to understand them better. But the reality is differentiate yourself from the competition Don't talk bad about them. All right. And number 5, making it all about you. Nobody cares how much revenue you do as a broker. Nobody cares how many awards you've had. Nobody cares how long you've been in the industry. What do they care about? They care about what's in it for them. Okay. What value can you provide them? What benefit can you provide them? What challenge can you help them solve? So don't make it about you. This kind of also goes back to talking too much, right? You have a tendency to vomit all over your prospect as opposed to listening more or asking interesting questions. These two kind of go hand in hand, but I definitely thought it was worth mentioning. Number 6, trying to convince people that don't have a need. Okay, listen, learn this about sales. No need equals no sale. Okay? If there is not a need, there's no sale, there's no opportunity, there's no sense in you beating them over the head with your club, because the reality is they don't have a need. All you're going to do by doing that is alienate that prospect, upset them, piss them off so that they don't want to talk to you down the road. Your goal should be to get their permission to follow up with them 30, 60, 90 days down the road. Now, it's okay to remind them of a need, right? Remind them of some of the challenges that are common or that they might be facing, but it's very hard for you as a broker, virtually impossible for you to create need. Okay. So they either need you or they don't. That's the reality. They have a problem or a challenge or an issue they want to solve. And so you can fill that gap if you connect the dots. Okay. So number 7, stop. For the love of God, stop focusing on price. Please. Stop focusing on price. If you focus on price, your prospect's going to focus on price. If you focus on value and service and relationship and trust, then you have an opportunity to impact value, relationship, trust, right? You cannot win this business. You cannot win in any business trying to always be the cheapest, okay? You do not want to be the Walmart of freight brokers. I promise you. It is a zero-sum game. You can't build a business making 25 or 50 bucks a load. You can't do it. There's just not enough money, not enough time in it. So you have to get paid for your time. So stop focusing exclusively on price. Okay. Number 8, over promising. Oh my God. This is another mortal sin. Okay. It is very hard to build trust with a prospect. Very hard. It's challenging. It's time consuming. It's painful. Building trust is very difficult and it takes time. But the reality is the number one way and the fastest way to lose trust is to overpromise and underdeliver. You cannot build a successful business in the freight brokerage, trucking, logistics industry if you do not retain your customers. So never overpromise, all right? My motto has always been underpromise, overdeliver. That is what you do, okay? All right, that's number 8. Number 9, not prepared to handle objections. Okay, well, there's a lot of new people in the industry, and there's a lot of people who have been in the industry that are really lousy at overcoming very common objections. What are the most common objections? Price, your price is too high. We don't use brokers. We're happy with our current provider. Send me some info. Those are common objections that you need to learn how to overcome. They're not difficult. They just take a little bit of practice. Practice by role playing. Practice by recording yourself overcoming those objections, right? Here's the reality. This is what I like to say. Competence creates confidence, okay? So the more competent you get at handling those objections, the more confident you will get in overcoming those objections live on a phone call, live in a sales call with a prospect, okay? All right, and number 9.5, remember, be different. I could have made that 10, but I said be different. 9.5, this is the final one, but I want you to hold on because I got a special announcement for you. Not scheduling a follow-up action or call. Okay, so let me explain to you what I mean by that. Has anybody ever here jumped on a phone call and had a really good phone call with a prospect, and then you say, well, he says, well, give me a call next week. And you say, okay, I'll call you next week. And you don't define a time, but you just do a loose follow-up. And then for the next week, 2, 3, 4 weeks, you're sending emails, you're trying to get him on the phone, and you just can't start another conversation with him. Has that ever happened to you? It's happened to me. It's happened to almost every new freight broker I've ever met. So here's the secret. Do not get off the call until you schedule the next call. Your goal at the end of a good, successful sales call, say it's a cold call where you build some rapport, you define some need, you're going to do a freight quote. Let's assume that's a basic, solid call, right? So the reality is at that point, what you should never do is you should never get off that call until you schedule the next call. Your goal is to go from call to call to call to call to customer, okay? Not to go from call to, trying to get them back on the phone for 6 months and hoping that they're going to become a customer, because that's not going to happen. So you need to schedule a call from your last call. And so you need to do that. You need to define the next step. What is the next step in this process? And part of that is a dialogue with your prospect, but your goal is a call. If not, have them define what happens next and how this decision process will be made. But here's a little trick. Here's a hack. Even when a lot of you set a follow-up call, hey, I'll call you next Tuesday at 9, okay? 9 a.m. And you set a what I call a soft appointment. I'm going to give you something that will literally double the amount of people that will show up for those calls, because those are very weak appointments. And a lot of times those calls are missed by your prospect because you set a weak appointment. So here's what you say, something to this effect. Hey, Joe, I know you're a busy guy, but please do me a favor. If for any reason you can't make our call in advance, would you please give me a heads up? Promise? That's a very simple tie down to your appointment, okay? So you're tying down the appointment. And at the end, I say promise, and I put a question mark on the end of it, because if they say promise, you literally are going to double the show up rate of the appointments that you schedule, okay? So those are the 9.5. Listen very carefully. If you guys are curious about becoming a freight broker or a freight agent, and you're looking for some help, right? I've trained over 10,000 students. I've personally done over $200 million as a freight broker. We offer a freight broker bootcamp startup program. You go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com. I trained over 10,000 students, had that program for well over a decade. And we offer a 60-day, 100% unconditional money back guarantee. You can check that out at freightbrokerbootcamp.com.